Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm so grateful to be here talking about how to imagine solutions to all of these problems that we're talking about. They're challenges. I don't believe they're insurmountable. I come to this conversation from a place of real optimism. And when Randy first talked to me about, how do we get to talk about civil discourse, I thought, well, I'm going to imagine a solution that's been around for thousands of years, but has kind of lost its way. So I want to start by saying debate is the solution to America's problems. Sounds kind of counterintuitive right now because that's not I think you're used to a kind of debate. We see a lot of debates. We hear a lot about debates. Think about our presidential debates, which are kind of an embarrassment. They don't really help us learn about new policies. They don't really help us learn about platforms. They're not really about substance. Or think about debates you typically see on the news or on talk shows, talking over each other, yelling. Nobody wants that, and that's not helping. But real debate, the way that a structured conversation actually enforces listening, learning, tolerance for the other side, engaging somebody you disagree with without becoming disagreeable, I think that's a vision for how we need to move forward across all of the various problems that we've been talking about today. So debate's the solution to America's problems. But how did we get here? Why is this a solution? So I think it comes down to right now, one unifying problem across every single industry: polarization. And it's not just polarization, it's because we're fighting. Polarization has led us to is leading us to just fight with one another on almost everything. Everything's been so hyper-politicized. We're entrenched in our partisan ideology and tribalism and echo chambers and filter bubbles. And so this level of polarization is now creating enemies amongst friends, between colleagues. It's complicating being collaborative and developing partnerships in the workplace. It's even dividing communities and school boards and classrooms and your kitchen table. So as cute as this is, we have some pretty big problems to solve. Let's talk about some divides in America where the debate has just become pretty unconstructive. Talking about social justice, climate change, solutions for how we're going to secure a world for our children, gun control, public safety, inequality, homelessness and poverty. And of course, the pandemic seems to have divided us further. And this global pandemic, which could have been a catalyst to bring us together to imagine solutions, ended up politicizing every single fact that we heard about, and that's now become a dirty word, fact. And same thing with the truth. But there's a reason for that. It's very well documented. It's in practically every Gallup poll and Pew poll and Edelman study and research organization, and it's this. The trust in American institutions has hit an all-time low. And the least trusted amongst Americans are the federal government, Congress, mainstream media, the Supreme Court, big business, and our criminal justice system. So if Americans don't feel like they can trust the information they get from the leaders delivering it, what ends up happening to society? We lose the ability to collaborate. We lose the ability to imagine solutions. And we can't work together. And this is why democracy doesn't function in such a polarized society. So I'm Clea. I'm the CEO of Intelligence Squared US. We're the only nonpartisan media organization out there curating debates that bring both sides together to really understand the complexity of these issues that are ahead of us and restore some civility and respect to our national conversation. Here's one of our debates. We did this earlier in the year. This is a debate on climate change. A live audience of 4,000 tuned into this, or we're actually live in Richmond, Virginia. And the question at hand was, can humans adapt to climate change? It's not a politicizing question, but it's all about solutions. How can we adapt? Or are we at a moment in time where we have to go into emergency action and mitigate? Adaptation versus mitigation. So this sort of debate is framed and structured in a completely different way than Americans are used to seeing, starting with opening remarks that are uninterrupted, presented by both sides, a point-counterpoint that's moderated in a way that creates a lot of fairness, equal time, but also holds both sides accountable for the facts and evidence and proof that they point out there. Because right now, if you don't have a dialogue between two sides that disagree, you don't learn anything. But you can't actually call somebody else's research out in real time. And that's something that's the scientific method. And I'd say that's the search for truth. Truth is now a dirty word. Truth has even been politicized. And that's a scary thought, because we do have to have a shared set of facts and a shared truth in order for our society to function properly. So here we have the thinker made up of fractures, but of both sides, of a combination of ideas in the search of the truth. And to me, that's what debate's really about, because it's definitely not this. But this is what we're taught, and this is what our kids are taught, and this is the national model that's been, out there for a while of what a debate is. A clown car of politicians yelling at each other and making our public square seem like we should tolerate this sort of rhetoric and behavior. It is not what real debate is all about. So I'm personally invested in this. Oops. I was born in Wisconsin. I grew up in Arizona, so I'm a Packers fan, used to extremes actually, and I moved to New York City 20 years ago to work in media, journalism, and this kind of stuff. And when I got to New York, people were fascinated with Arizona. It was like the Wild West. It's how big is the Grand Canyon really? And can you really fry an egg on the sidewalk? Do scorpions glow in the dark? Arizona was a place of wonder. In 2012, Gabby Giffords was shot in Arizona. It's now become the hub of election denial in this country. And this is our national ambassador. The QAnon shaman also hails from Arizona. No one should be proud of this. I certainly am not. But it really drives me to wonder and investigate how we can bring both sides together when we have such extreme partisan divides at this level of amplification. Not an easy problem to fix, because it starts here. This is a media bias chart. This is tracking all of the different media outlets in the US and ranks them by most extreme on the left to most extreme on the right. And as you can see, under that green dotted line right there, which is the line for mostly analysis or even a mix of facts and reporting, everything below that is analysis that's highly variable in reliability, it's opinion, or it just goes straight into propaganda. It's using persuasive techniques and just crosses straight into marketing. That's about 2/3 of media outlets. So if you consider we have an erosion of trust at a historic level, and then this is our media landscape, we have a big problem to solve. And not to be Debbie Downer, but it kind of gets worse when you look at cable news, which is now really, people have divided into I'm on one side or the other, only hearing one side of the story. You can curate your social media feed, so you never have to hear another perspective. I think 10% of kids are now getting their news on TikTok. And these algorithms create the same reverberating effect, and they reinforce our biases. They don't introduce us to another point of view, and this is why we look at each other as enemies. It's a breakdown in social fabric. And last but not least, we're leading the world. It seems America's superpower these days is partisanship, far outranking every other country and continent on the globe in political polarization. Source of this is the New York Times, based on Gallup research. So, if you consider all of these effects, how do you bring people back together in the spirit of being civil, of being respectful about divergent points of view, especially in such a diverse democracy as America, which is uniquely challenged by this problem? We think it's with debate. So I've produced around 200 public policy debates that really go deep and ask some serious questions. And I jotted down a few here that I thought that were particularly pertinent to this audience as of today, right? In the talks that we heard earlier. Is the FDA's caution hazardous to our health? We heard this amazing story of curing blindness. It took 15 years to get through regulations. Is there a better way? Debate is a great vehicle for bringing policymakers and scientists together to have that conversation. Or should we use gene editing to build better babies? And to what extent, and what are the ethical queries there? What about education? Should we forgive student debt? It's a pretty divided issue. What about the SAT? Something we've used to measure getting into college now for years. Schools are getting rid of it. And what about foreign policy? There's a lot of concern about China, the future of China and America. And if there really is a war, is Taiwan defensible or not? There are serious questions that right now are being treated like sensationalized headlines instead of the deeply challenging, worthy, thoughtful sorts of debates they need to be treated as in this country. And in a couple weeks, we're going to have one. Is America too obsessed with race? And how do we have that conversation in a civil way? I'm going to prove we can do it. We've brought over 600 amazing thought leaders, journalists, best-selling authors, policymakers, to the stage over the years. And we've developed different formats to have different kinds of conversations. I'll grant you that not everything is a debate, but everything's debatey. And we have different formats to think about how to invite these two sides together. So we just launched a weekly program last August on NPR. And good on you, Naples, because WGCU here in the area carries this program now, as does a lot of Florida, actually, rolling out around the country so that we're able to kind of build understanding and empathy for our opposition and what we perceive as that. What I'm saying isn't new. Our ancients used debate to build democracy. They vigorously compared and contrasted ideas in order to arrive at what were the best solutions available at the time with the information that we had to build Western civilization as we know it. How have we lost the ability to use debate in the public square in a positive way? When I saw Ben's downward spiral versus the idea of possibilities, Socrates and Plato represent that open, ideas of possibilities region. And I was really inspired by that. And I think there's a lot of truth there. Truth! What it comes down to is debate is about the exchange of ideas. We can't be on a one-way street anymore. It's not working. It's really hurting us. But here's, based on all of the debates that we've done and tracking our audience, which we've done when they walk in the door before they hear a debate and when they leave after they've heard all the arguments. Something pretty magical happens in that hour. Hearing both sides, often for most people for the first time, with credible insights and expert delivery, has this amazing effect. 32% of people actually change their minds after attending a debate. It's an average number. That's an extraordinary movement of the dial from closed-minded to open-minded. It may even have reinforced your existing opinion, but you learned something from the other side. And you also got some empathetic reasoning with why they have that opinion, and new evidence and facts and data that are going to help us all get back to the truth. And my favorite example of changing minds for our science audience here is Bill Nye the Science Guy, who attended a debate that we produced on genetically modified food, just asking the question, genetically modify food? And Bill was not convinced by the arguments he heard from the scientists in favor of GMOs. And that was defended by a guy named Rob Fraley, who was the CTO of Monsanto. So to have Monsanto come up in the public square and defend GMOs is really powerful. Bill's in the audience and stands up and challenges him, because there's an audience participation part of real debate, and says, how can you stand by this technology? It's not old enough. You don't have enough data. You don't have the science to tell me this is safe and to rule this out for the globe. And Rob says, we do. What I've said is true. Come to my lab. They spent time together. Bill went on a learning tour of various facilities, including spending a lot of time in Monsanto. And 2 weeks later, he went on the record saying, my mind's been changed. GMOs are scalable, they're safe, and they're going to help us feed millions of people. They could potentially solve world poverty. And I got to get behind this technology as a scientist. That's the power of real debate. And if we can change Bill Nye's mind, imagine if we could scale this and bring this civility and respect back to the public square. Right now, we've collaborated with IBM on the first AI that can debate a human being. The idea is to be able to remove bias from the arguments that are made on both sides. Really ambitious, as everybody is now talking about ChatGPT and already how biased this new technology is. And is it going to do more harm than good? So Project Debater here, this was the first debate between an AI and a human. It's about 15 minutes long. You can find it on our website. And it really is a fascinating study in debate, the art of persuasion, the art of selecting sources and presenting them. And if you're concerned, I can tell you the human won. But it's not long before we're using technology like this to help us make decisions, to help us see two sides, and be able to actually inform and educate based on technology like this. But it has to be developed the right way. We're collaborating right now with psychologists, scientists, technologists, people in the government, to understand how we could bridge this divide again with balanced information, with an emphasis on civility, a return to respect for contrary opinions, and understanding that just because we disagree, we don't have to hate each other. We want to build more threads like you see here between the two sides. Debate, able to change the minds of a third of the people that experience it, when done right, is a pretty interesting model. Which brings me to next year, because we're coming up on 2024 elections. We have the presidential debates in our sights. And wouldn't it be amazing if you saw the two candidates who were going to be representing all of us on the global stage in a debate, grounded in facts and reason analysis, bridge building between the two sides, focused on substance, actually having a real debate in the spirit of our ancients that's a nod to democracy? Well, I think it's possible. I think we can do it. And I'd love for you to join me on this mission to bring more debate, the right kind of debate, to Americans, but get it in our classrooms, get it back on college campuses where we need intellectual diversity in order to actually solve some of these problems, and take it up to the highest levels so that we can be really proud of the kind of civil discourse model we're presenting to the rest of the world. So with that, thank you very much.